I think your district is just so fascinating because it is one of the largest Hispanic districts that's currently represented by a Republican. Are you banking in your candidacy on voters feeling like the immigration aspects of the Trump administration have been overreached on, even if they may have voted for him in 2024?
Absolutely. I think people are having buyer's remorse. Again, violent criminals, they absolutely should be deported. Securing our borders, that's increasingly important and something we need to pay attention to. But it's got to be a holistic approach as well. We can't be indiscriminate with the people that we are ensnaring in the system, deporting them without due process. I was a homicide prosecutor, and we had a process. And at the end of that process, it could be not guilty, it could be guilty. But we respected the result because we had put the rules in place beforehand. And we knew as Americans what was most important is that we follow the rule of law. It's also why, as an investigator in the January 6th committee, that was my preeminent concern, making sure the rule of law is followed, no matter who the defendant is, right? And so I think absolutely we need to make sure that immigrants are being treated with due process, that we're not staging photo ops, that we're not doing gimmicks, right? That we're actually paying attention to what the critical need of our community is.
I want to drill down on the work that you did as part of the January 6th committee, because you're one of the first people who worked on that committee to then take their role as a staffer and try to parlay it into a run for office. You are likely to meet some voters on the campaign trail who believe the disinformation about that day, this idea that it was peaceful or just a tour. Obviously, we know what happened on that day at the U.S. Capitol. The scars are very much still there. But is that divide even bridgeable with voters? Are some of them just simply lost to you over a day that has been a flashpoint within the Trump movement for Republicans broadly?
I think we could all agree that political violence of all stripes against any party, against any person is wrong and needs to be called out, and those people need to be held to account. A lot of people in my community, they are from Venezuela, they're from Cuba. They fled regimes of political instability and political violence. It's real life to them. It isn't theoretical, they lived it. And we had our own example of that on January 6th. And so I think the vast majority of Americans believe that the violent insurrectionists, the people who hurt police officers and led to their deaths, several deaths of police officers, that they absolutely should be held to account, that we need to study, when we did study, and we need to take into account the lessons that we learned so that it doesn't happen again.
And yet we've seen the president pardon most, if not all, of those involved with that day. So what does that tell you about where this country is at right now?
Well, and again, it's another lie from the president, from this administration, and Congresswoman Salazar sat by and said nothing while it happened. People thought he was going to have this maybe process where he was going to pardon some of the January 6th defendants. Instead, it was carte blanche. It was everybody. It was a fell swoop. People, again, who had previous instances of violence in their pasts, who have now since continued to engage in criminal activity, people who harmed and hurt and even led to the deaths of officers. And so I think the vast majority of Americans, again, think that that was wrong and not something we should be doing. Again, as a homicide prosecutor, I made sure that, violent criminals were put away, that we kept our streets safe. That is the first role of government, the basic role of government. And the president didn't do that. And the Congresswoman stood by and said nothing.
Robin Peguero running for Congress now in Florida's 27th district. You got a primary to go through, but we'll be watching this race as it unfolds. Thank you for coming on with us. Again, your first interview since announcing your run. Thanks.
Thank you, Ali.